Okay, so
Yeah.
ready for a deep dive.
Always.
Today we are going way back to explore the history of alcohol. I mean, it's something that pops up all the time in literature, and I think it's really interesting to explore like its whole journey, from like when it was first discovered kind of accidentally to, how it became this global thing, global trade and everything.
Yeah.
I think it's really a really fascinating story. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. And it's surprisingly intertwined with human civilization.
Yeah.
From those early, accidental discoveries to, did you know that spirits were, used as currency at one point? It's wild.
That is wild. I did not know that. So let's start, right at the beginning. I mean, how did alcohol even, come about?
Well, picture this. You've got a bunch of chinks just hanging out, and they stumble upon some plums, right? But these plums are, extra ripe, maybe even a little fermented.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and that's where the magic happens. You see, there's this tiny organism called yeast that naturally lives on fruit, and it just loves sugar.
Okay.
So it starts eating the sugar in those plums, and guess what it produces as a byproduct?
Alcohol.
Bingo! That's fermentation in a nutshell.
Wow. So, even chimps were, enjoying a little accidental happy hour.
Maybe. But the cool part is that our human ancestors, whether they learned from watching those chimps or figured it out on their own, they took that natural process and, made it their own.
Okay, so humans kind of, took it to the next level.
Exactly. And we see evidence of this intentional fermentation all the way back to 7,000 BCE in China. They were making these early alcoholic drinks from things like rice and honey.
Wow, 7,000 BCE. That's, seriously old school brewing.
Oh, yeah. But it wasn't just happening in China. All over the world, different cultures were brewing up their own boozy concoctions. You've got the Egyptians and Mesopotamians. They were really into their beer, which makes sense, right?
Yeah, they were already growing grains for food, so why not use them for drinks too?
Exactly. It was this natural extension of their agriculture. And then you've got wine, which was a big deal in places like Greece and Rome, where grapes were plentiful.
Right, those classic images of Roman feasts with goblets of wine. But even back then, I bet people had different opinions about alcohol, right?
Oh, absolutely. In ancient Greece, you had physicians who saw wine as a health tonic.
Interesting.
And then, of course, you had poets who were all about the creative inspiration that flowed from a good drink.
Ah, yes, the muse of wine.
Exactly. But then you also had philosophers, the deep thinkers who were hold on a second. Maybe too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. It was a debate that, honestly, we're still having today.
Yeah, for sure. And it wasn't just a personal preference either, right? Religion had some strong opinions about alcohol too.
Yeah, totally. In early Judeo-Christian traditions, wine was a part of their rituals, but they definitely weren't fans of getting drunk. And then in Islam, there were concerns about prayer and intoxication, which eventually led to a wider ban on alcohol.
Right. So it's fascinating to see how alcohol was both celebrated and kind of controlled, I guess you could say, by these different religious traditions.
Exactly. It really shows how deeply alcohol was woven into the fabric of different cultures.
Okay, so we've talked about these early drinks, but I'm curious, how strong were they?
Well, with those early fermentation techniques, the alcohol content was actually pretty low, nothing like the hard stuff we have today.
Oh, okay, so it wasn't knock you off your feet strong.
Not quite. But then came the game changer, distillation. It's documented in Arabic texts from the 9th century, and it basically involves boiling fermented liquid to concentrate the alcohol. That's how you get those potent spirits like brandy, gin, whiskey.
So that's when things really started to get interesting.
Oh, yeah. And those spirits, they weren't just for, getting a good buzz. They actually had a much longer shelf life than beer or wine, which made them perfect for trading.
Oh, I see. That makes a lot of sense. So alcohol was not just a drink, it was an economic force, too.
Absolutely. Think about rum, for example, made from sugarcane in the Caribbean. It was a huge commodity in North America. Mm. And European traders were using brandy and gin almost like currency in Africa, trading them for goods, land, and unfortunately even people.
Yeah, it's a reminder that the history of alcohol, just like with so many other things, is, it's not always pretty.
Yeah, there's definitely a dark side to this story, especially when it comes to exploitation. But on a more, practical note, those spirits also played a role in, preserving water on those long sea voyages during the age of exploration?
So alcohol helped fuel those voyages of discovery in more ways than one. Huh.
Exactly.
It's pretty amazing to see how something that started as like fermented fruit ended up having such a huge impact on like world history, trade, and even exploration.
It really does make you appreciate how complex the story of alcohol is. It's so much more than just a drink.
Absolutely. So, I mean, now that we know this whole like epic backstory of alcohol, I think it's interesting to think about, what role it plays in our world today. Like, how does alcohol factor into, our lives? Or even in the literature we read. Think about it. You've got all these stories, all these characters, and alcohol often pops up somewhere in their narratives.
It's a great question to consider. How does alcohol shape the stories we tell? And how does it reflect the cultures we live in?
Yeah, it definitely makes you think.
And that's the beauty of a deep dive like this. The story of alcohol is still being written. We are all a part of its history, and we all have a role to play in shaping its future.
That is an excellent point. So next time you raise a glass or crack open a book, think about this deep dive, and maybe, just maybe, you'll see alcohol in a whole new light.
Cheers to that.
Cheers.
Explore. To investigate or discuss a subject in detail. Trade. The action of buying and selling goods and services. Fascinating. Extremely interesting. Intertwined. Twisted together, closely connected. Civilization. The stage of human social and cultural development and organization that is considered most advanced. Yeast. A microscopic fungus consisting of single oval cells that reproduce by budding and are capable of converting sugar into alcohol and carbon dioxide. Fermentation. The chemical breakdown of a substance by bacteria, yeasts, or other microorganisms, typically involving effervescence and the giving off of heat. Brewing. The process of making beer. Concoctions. A mixture of various ingredients or elements. Plentiful. Existing in or yielding great quantities, abundant. Goblets. A drinking glass with a foot and a stem. Feast. A large meal, especially one held to celebrate a special occasion. Physician. A person qualified to practice medicine. Tonic. A medicinal substance taken to give a feeling of vigor or well-being. Intoxication. The state of being intoxicated, especially by alcohol. Voyages. A long journey involving travel by sea or in space.